Hi, I'm intuitive wellness coach Elle. Let's dive into the top 10 food triggers to be aware of. Number one, not wanting to waste food. This is a big one for me, especially with the prices only going up on organic produce and other healthy options. When you're paying for groceries to be delivered, you want to make the cost worth it by buying a good amount of food. But when those carrots go bendy in the bottom of the fridge, it feels like such a waste, and it makes me not want to buy so many fresh foods. We know through various studies that the more fruit and vegetables we eat, the better our chances of reducing our risk of developing chronic illnesses. So instead of cutting back on fresh produce, I like to make a soup a few days after I get the fresh groceries delivered and use up most of the things that I haven't had a chance to cook in other recipes. Home cooking turns out to be a whole lot healthier than eating out, so I try to do that as much as possible. Once you've made a big batch of something, it's also tempting to keep topping up your plate or just finishing off those last few spoons of a recipe that's just a little bit more than what truly makes you full. It's not enough for a full serving of leftovers, but you don't want to throw it away. So, what do we do? Well, the Blue Zone studies show that the healthiest, longest living people in the world eat just enough until they are about 80% full. So if I have leftover cooked vegetables, for example, I'll stash them in the fridge and use them the next day in some kind of burger made with millet or quinoa or beans or mushrooms. You could also use leftover cooked vegetables in a frittata or a quiche the next day. I like to use a combination of chickpea flour, pumfu, pumpkin seed tofu, and a little bit of nut cheese blended in to make a quiche base instead of using eggs. If you have leftover beans, you could also make a bean dip, so get creative. Number two, food trigger, eating out with friends. Now, this should be an anxiety-free situation where you're relaxed and enjoying the company of your friends and not having to worry about food choices. But there was a meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which reviewed 42 studies and found strong evidence that people select to eat more food when eating with friends compared to when they eat alone. When we meet with friends, our guard is down, we feel aligned and happy and connected. Studies show that if the first person in a group to order orders a salad, other people at the table will be much more likely to also order salad. However, if other people are ordering dessert and extra food, it's also likely that you will follow suit. This can be a fine line. You want to be able to celebrate life and on occasion indulge in something that you may not normally eat or buy to have in your home, but it lifts your senses and enhances that shared experience of dining with others. But if we're not careful, these indulgences can get out of hand and we can end up opening a doorway to a food that we know is a troublemaker in our health. So keep these indulgences in check. It helps to be prepared and try to look at the menu ahead of time if you can to decide on your healthy choices. Or eat a light, healthy snack before you go so that you're not tempted by the foods that can be problematic. Everyone is bio-individual, and this will be different for everyone. Know your vices and know what works for you without guilt. Food trigger number three, food FOMO, not wanting to miss out on all the latest trends on Instagram or foods and drinks that influencers are endorsing. Being highly influenced by what you see others eating on social media can lead to situations where you're eating highly unusual foods, and even at times of the day when you normally wouldn't eat them, and it will affect your health and energy. For example, you may have noticed a trend to make hot chocolate with bone broth as an evening drink. Chocolate is a stimulant, so you could find that this trend will affect your sleep. Being aware of your cycles, including your daily circadian rhythm, is helpful so that you know what works for you and your hormones. Food trigger number four, food addictions. The food industry reached the $1 trillion level in 2022, and companies who produce packaged foods allocate plenty of research dollars on finding out what's going to keep you coming back for more. The proliferation of so-called natural flavors, modified starches, Yeasts and other additives in processed foods are designed to keep you hooked and coming back for more. There's extensive research done to develop foods that have a satisfying mouthfeel and then dissolve quickly in your mouth, making you reach for more food. Once you are aware of this, it makes it easier to see past the flashy marketing and tune in more to the actual ingredients of a product. The truth is, this can be confusing too, since there are hidden ingredients that companies are not required to include on the label. Not to mention the many ingredients used in the US that are banned in other countries like the UK, Europe, and Australia. So, as much as possible, steer clear of processed and packaged foods and reach for whole, fresh foods. Very often, when a client visits a health practitioner, the first thing they usually do is to advise them to go on an elimination diet, perhaps for 2 to 4 weeks. And they are asked to cut out many types of food from gluten to dairy, coffee, and alcohol, and rely mostly on fresh veggies and fruit. This gives them a chance to notice any relief of symptoms from this dietary cleanse, and often the client feels better energy levels and other positive changes since giving up processed foods. Consider cutting back and see how you feel. Food trigger number 5, what's on sale this week? I've definitely been guilty of stocking up on my borderline foods, the kind of foods that I only like to eat in moderation or at certain phases of my cycle, just because they were on sale. And of course, what happens is I adapt my meal plan to incorporate the eat in moderation foods just because they're there, plentiful, and staring at me from the fridge or pantry. Another thing that happens is that we may opt for the cheap option rather than the brand that's more clean. Generally, the cheap option has less nutritional density, so phasing into whole foods will leave you more satisfied so you don't need to overbuy them the way that you would the cheaper foods. Whole foods nourish the body more deeply, and after a while, you adapt to not needing so many filler foods and overeating carbs and fats. There's only so long before junk foods will show in your skin, hair, energy levels, concentration, digestion, and mood. But the good news is, on the flip side, there's only so long before a healthy, fresh, whole food diet starts showing up in the form of a healthy glow, strong, shiny hair, vibrancy, feeling fit and resilient, with healthy phytonutrients fueling your immune system. Whether you shop online or in person or a mix of both, just know that grocery stores spend a lot of money researching how to trigger customers to purchase more products. I've worked on branding and product development for big supermarket brands in the past, and they look deeply into the psychology of what triggers a purchase. Stores put a lot of consideration, research, and data into the music that's playing as you're strolling the aisles, the fragrances that pump out in the air above the bakery section, and the position of certain brands on the shelves, and even to the extent of developing their own brands that replicate the best sellers but using cheaper ingredients. There was a research study done on what music would elicit certain buying patterns. Stores played the song When a Man Loves a Woman, and the women would buy big steaks for their husbands. So it's not by accident where things are placed and what the environment is like when you go shopping, and it's mostly working on a subconscious level. That leads us into the next food trigger. Food trigger number 6, our subconscious food rules. This is when we can create arbitrary time limits or rules around what has to happen with our food. And should is an important word to listen out for here in our internal voices around food. We can get a bit robotic and not be in tune with our bodies. Our subconscious food rules can carry on from what we were taught in childhood, or it could stem from a societal rule or a way that worked for us in the past, but we may have since outgrown. Here are some examples. Saying things to ourselves like, I'm not too hungry now, but if I don't eat now, it will be too late if I get hungry later. Or it could be that you think you should only eat salad for lunch, or that you should eat a large breakfast and a small portion at dinner. If you are following a food rule that you adopted from an article or someone else, stop and evaluate now and then whether it actually works for you. Don't be afraid to experiment with new rules. Healthy food advice can get confusing. Studies are commissioned all the time to research the benefits of all types of foods, and they could be contradictory to each other. So find what works best for you and your level of best wellness. Another old pattern to question could be having to have something sweet after a savory meal. This is one that I had to tackle. And once I began tracking and working with my cycle, I realized that yes, at some points in my cycle, while I'm building progesterone, for example, I crave something sweet. But during other phases of my cycle, it wasn't necessary at all. So become more mindful. Also, when we are caught up in the urgency and rushing, we may not be conscious of our food choices. So just be aware when you're in a rushing mode and that you can stop and breathe and really tune in to what kind of food that you want to eat at that moment. Then there are some rules that you can alchemize to actually work for you. It was so drilled into many of us to eat our veggies first before having dessert. I notice that most mornings I actually feel good about getting in my green juice before eating other things. So I've adapted this subconscious rule to work for me and it feels right. It feels motivating when you have a healthy habit that shows in your skin and hair, and you can feel excited to get that done in the morning before eating in a more flexible way. So that's one food rule that you can bend and make it work for you. And I also break the rule now and then. Let's say it's a weekend and I want to have a nice, healthy brunch with my friends. I might not stick to the habit of having a green juice before I eat other things. Flexibility and knowing what works for you is key. I track my healthy habits on my cycle habits tracker, which helps me to plan my meals, my workouts, my self care, and other activities according to my personal cycle. You can check it out at cyclehabits.com. Food trigger number 7, hunger as a bad thing. As adults, we may not even allow ourselves to get to the point of feeling the discomfort of hunger. We may have our meals all lined up for the day and eat on schedule and even have snacks in between so that we very rarely feel and get to experience those true feelings of hunger that our body has processed and utilized what it can and is now asking for more fuel. We forget that it's okay to feel hungry, and if we're able to wait a little bit longer to eat, that's a good thing. The beginning feelings of slight hunger stirring doesn't necessarily have to indicate that we must go and get food into our systems ASAP. We can often overestimate how much time and energy it will take to prepare something from scratch versus choosing the convenient option. It could just take 20 minutes to prepare a nourishing, clean meal. And in most circumstances, your hunger could wait that long. But we are so unaccustomed to feeling that hunger that we avoid sitting with it. Now, I'm not a huge fan of fasting. At times when it's right for my cycle, I will do intermittent fasting. But this is after months of feeding my adrenals and coming off of any stimulants such as coffee or matcha or chocolate or too much sugar so that I could comfortably fast and not tax my adrenals. If you are someone who relies on stimulants and you want to try fasting, you may want to ensure that your adrenals and anxiety levels are in check before pushing your body too much into having to operate, let's say, in a high stress level without fuel. You may want to avoid that scenario and also time your fast with your follicular phase. This will help you to feel less hungry in that phase of your cycle. Food trigger number 8, emotional eating. Have you ever been in love? Did you notice that you don't eat as much? Your needs for comfort and physical touch are being met, and you have that closeness with someone. Food can also give us these good feeling hormones and chemicals, and if we are craving these feelings, we may turn to food. We want to experience a full life, full of excitement, entertainment, safety, and comfort. If we are not feeling fulfilled in certain areas of our lives, we can too easily turn to foods. You could do an audit of the areas in your life to see where you would welcome in more change. Is your need for physical touch, social connection, and friendships being fulfilled? Do you feel financially secure? You may think that these have absolutely nothing to do with what you're eating, but if we dig deeper, we can recognize what our desires are and in what ways we can fulfill them throughout the day. Journaling your thoughts and experiences could help bring awareness to this. Food trigger number 9, foods that go together, like peanut butter and jelly, bread and butter, cheese and crackers, milk and cookies. You get the picture. This is another one that gets me. For example, I had given up those processed fake vegan cheeses a while ago since they contain additives that I don't want to eat anymore. And now, when I go to buy olives, it's really hard not to pair it with this fake feta cheese that I used to buy to make a Greek salad. Or when I want to eat a Thai green curry, it's a real change for me to order it with brown rice instead of the usual white rice that I'm just so used to eating with it for years. When you want to change a healthy habit and swap things out in your diet, such as giving up processed foods or embracing whole grains, there will be some adjustments, some transitions, and it takes a level of trust to make it through those tough in the moment decisions. But what I found is that those moments are transient, and once you're eating the healthier versions and leaving out the problematic foods, you'll find new ways to eat and enjoy the new flavors and textures. It becomes more fulfilling and nourishing, and you'll get through it. It also helps to say to yourself, if I really want to have the fake cheese or the white rice or the candy or whatever you're trying to swap out, then I can have it. I'm an adult, I'm in charge, and I choose to try a new way. I can always go back, but right now I'm going to nourish myself and reach a higher level of health and feel good about it. Food trigger number 10, intuitive eating gone wrong. You may be shocked to hear that adipose tissue, also known as belly fat, actually has its own cravings. Or more accurately, it triggers cravings for sugar and fatty foods. Also, most of us carry around viruses that we collected as children and adolescents, and these viral communities hang out in our organs and can feed on certain foods like eggs, dairy, and toxins. So we may be mistaking our innocent cheese cravings for underlying conditions or food addictions. This is where intuitive eating goes in the wrong direction. Yes, we want to eat mindfully, more consciously. That's a good thing. And we want to walk the line of being balanced with feeling what our body needs and knowing when to sense more of an addiction for the types of foods that we would normally find in the eat moderately or rarely category, like dairy and red meat and saturated fats, and know the difference between what we truly crave for our health. But if you're tuning into your body and it's craving some kale, then go for it. So there you have it, the top 10 food triggers to be aware of. Let's recap. Not wanting to waste food, eating out with friends, food FOMO, not knowing your food addictions, what's on sale this week, our subconscious food rules, hunger as a bad thing, emotional eating, foods that go together, and intuitive eating gone wrong. Are there any food triggers that you've experienced? Comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more wellness tips.